Please welcome to the stage Paul Sohi.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. I want to speak to you today about the future of wearables. Before I get started, is Simone still here from Adidas? Oh, yeah, I think he's in the back. I'm just kind of super embarrassed that I'm not wearing my pair of Adidas right now. I'm a massive sneakerhead. I left my EQTs at home. But anyway, and thank you again to USTRY for inviting me back for the second year. So at Autodesk, I do a lot of design research, applications in medical industry, mass customization, applications in IoT and wearable technologies. And ultimately, all those design processes boil down to I can do that, I will do that, and I made that. My own background actually is in architecture, and I decided I didn't want to draw toilets for the rest of my life. So I moved into product design, which is where I started that startup that led me to what I do now. I have what I would argue is one of the best jobs in the world, where I get to be a professional maker as well as helping the new generation of startups bring their ideas to reality. And I think that photo kind of perfectly captures what my day-to-day job is like. But before we talk about the future of wearables, I think what we really need to do is take a step back and contextualize what it is we mean when we say wearable. And chances are, when I say wearable, you probably think of one of these. And the more trendy of you might be thinking of the Snapchat glasses. But in reality, what we think of as a wearable typically is a hard product, a solid object that is strapped to us one way or another. And its functionality and its capabilities are pretty limited. So this device essentially offsets the notifications from my phone to my wrist. It is also able to give me my pulse and tell me how many steps I take a day. But that data on its own is not particularly useful. Beyond telling me what my resting heart rate is and whether I reach my step goals, what am I supposed to do with that information? It also doesn't factor in all of these other things. So when we talk about wearable technologies, we're talking about the body. And there's a huge amount that comes into that. When you look at the head, whether you're talking about optics, taste, smell, respiration, your vitals, your internal organs, information that not only has an application to yourself, but to a wider scope, whether you want to take medicine from being a reactionary technology in science to a proactive science, the ability to think about things like mobility, whether it's prosthetics, orthotics, or even assistive devices. Even now, you can see me sort of stammering around the stage. My gait, my bias, I have issues with my feet, for example. Being able to get information on that and then take that information and extrapolate it and develop something that helps me. All of this is ultimately what becomes what I think of as a wearable device. And this really, what I'm talking about here is kind of the quantified self. So when you start thinking about the quantified self and things like mobility, you're actually expanding the scope of what a wearable is. This, for example, is a wearable. It's a prosthetic device. I actually talked about this last year at USTRY, but right before the Rio Games. This is the first ever 3D printed prosthetic to be used at the Rio Paralympic Games. It is a totally custom product made for Denise Schindler up there. And this the processes behind this are now a mass customizable solution. Simone, I see you back. I'm sorry about these. I left my EQTs in London. I'm super embarrassed. And actually, the realization of this product allowed Denise to win a silver and a bronze medal in two events that she's never medaled in before. And of course, she as an athlete has gotten a lot better, but we like to think that the prosthetic really kind of helped push her that further down, get her performing even harder. So from a kind of dumb prosthetic, we can start to look at things like smart bionics. This is a project called the Luke Hand. The Luke Hand is aiming to take upper limb bionics and make them intelligent, implementing machine learning and artificial intelligence to make that arm actually learn the habits of an individual and go from something that is reactive to sensors to actually proactive, learning what it is that you're doing while you're trying to do it, taking in things like object recognition, not from cameras, but actually from the way that you grip stuff to make your life a little bit easier. And then we come to the hardest challenge of them all, the wheelchair. Now, you may not think this, but this is a wearable. People use this every day. It's a device that they need to go about their lives. And that picture is pretty much the state-of-the-art tech right now when it comes to wearables. That dissemination in wheelchairs, this is about as good as it gets. There are many, many other solutions out there, but chances are if you need a wheelchair, this is what you're going to get. So I want to take a step back from widening that scope to talk about the intersection. Wearables is the first time ever that we're seeing a true kind of cross-platform integration of lots of different industries. There's fashion and textiles and wearables that ultimately, we're talking about soft goods. But as product designers and mechanical engineers and industrial designers, pick your poison, chances are you're designing products that look like this. They've got hard angles, they're rigid products, you're using right angles. If you're lucky, you might do something a little bit more organic like that, drone. But if you're in fashion and textiles, you're doing stuff that looks like this. Now, how is it that we can find a way to bring the two together? As it exists, like I said, chances are this is what you come up with. Now, as a device, this works just fine, but it's really not that good. It's not really a wearable. I mean, it's a watch, yeah, I wear it on my wrist, but it's not what I think a wearable should be. When I think about wearables, I think what we're aiming for should look a little bit more like this. This is the MX360 from a company called Bionics. This was actually their first product a few years ago, and they wanted to tackle the issue of safety and visibility. So what you're seeing here is a jacket designed for cycling. The electronics are actually pretty subtle. Those are true LEDs. That's not EL light you're looking at. It has different ways of communicating visibility to an individual. But again, as a first foray, this isn't really wearable tech. It's just sort of shoehorning two things together. I want to take soft goods, I want to take electronics, and I'm just going to ram them together and hope for the best. I think this really is a better example of what wearables should be. This is Skin. It's actually from the same company. And Skin aims to do a lot. So as human beings, we've evolved over billions of years, but our understanding of our bodies is only a fraction of that. Our consciousness is only able to extrapolate and analyze a very small amount of our operating system. And what Skin aims to do is quantify the self in ways that's truly useful. So taking things like your ECG, 6-axis IMUs, understanding your body temperature, your movement capabilities, your movement habits. It starts to give data that's actually truly useful and functional while also remaining pretty uninvasive. I'm assuming everyone in this room is wearing underwear right now. No one's going commando. I mean, if you are, good for you. But as a device, you can see that's pretty uninvasive. There is a small, there's a small clip here and there, which is the microcontroller, but the sensor is actually the fabric. So this is the first time in my mind that I've seen a device that I would consider a true wearable. All of that data that's being extrapolated, the ECG, body temperature, your movement, all of that is in the textile. The little chip on the side there is really just to bring that information out and communicate it to other products. So I'm going to end on just a couple statements here. When we talk about the quantified self, I think this is really how I like to think about it, that we wish to externalize the internal. We want to bring the mysteries of ourselves out and to understand them. As far as science goes, when it comes to this, we know less about this than we do about space, surprisingly enough. And I think that kind of extends into something else, that we long for a better way to extend and express, and we wish to be understood. And I mean that in the literal sense as well as the philosophical sense. And I think that's the promise of wearables, the ability to quantify myself and express that outwards in whatever way you wish to take that. So I know that was quite short, but thank you very much. If you want to reach out and have a chat, that's how to do it. And I'll see you soon. Thanks.
Great, Paul.